Writing morally gray characters is hard. Most of the time, they just come off as being completely awful people that are redeemed only by being attractive or switching to the hero's side, but Arcane does it quite well in Season 1 with Jinx and Silco. There are a million and one questions about their relationship, but I guess to get to those, we have to start at the beginning. Before Silco found her, Powder was just a little girl who felt very ostracized by her brothers, with only Vi there to reassure her that she was wanted. However, after Vi and their brothers went to save Vander in the third episode, Powder had a breakdown after being left behind on such an important task. So she followed them, and her bombs led to Milo, Clagger, and Vander dying. When Vi found out she was there, she lashed out at Powder and then left her alone in the wreckage. Silco found Powder instead, and he took her in, surprisingly. After the time skip, we're introduced to the current nature of their relationship. Powder is now Jinx, and she works as one of Silco's top underlings, way more skilled in combat than before, even with her occasional mess ups. The two are clearly close, and he spends a lot of time encouraging her to leave her past behind and reinvent herself fully. Both of them believe that Vi is dead, but when Jinx finds out that this wasn't true, she thinks Silco lied to her about it. The two have an argument, and she runs off. The rest of the season is spent with them apart, mostly, but when they do reconnect, it's after Echo and Jinx have their fight in episode 7. She's on the brink of death, and he rushes her to a doctor, if you can really call Singed a doctor, to save her. It works, but Jinx is still scarred from the experience. The shimmer only worsens her mental state, and she goes completely missing. Silco doesn't know this, though. He's so busy being in talks with Jace to get Zaun's independence. And the only problem is that Piltover wants Jinx in return to make an example out of her. He's obviously conflicted by this and has a monologue going through his decision while sitting at a statue of Vander. Jinx is eavesdropping the whole time. After hearing what she says, she kidnaps him. During the final scene of the show, the tea party scene, he's tied up at the head of the table and gagged. He manages to get out of the gag right as she's starting to have a breakdown and hallucinate. Vi's only making this worse as she tries to get through to Powder, reminding her of her childhood, but it's too late. Jinx finally breaks. She accidentally shoots him during her breakdown, and he dies. What happened to the two of them throughout Season 1 isn't what's under debate, though. The real question is, was Silco good for her? It seems the overall consensus is that Silco was using Jinx the entire time for his own benefit and manipulating her into doing what he wanted. To be fair, even though I disagree, there's some valid reasoning for thinking like this. After all, he did encourage her to do his dirty work, even though it was clearly not in her best interest mentally. They also lack a lot of really important boundaries with each other, especially physically. There's so many scenes where they're just too close, and it's uncomfortable to watch. He talks to her in a very manipulative way, too. Over and over again, Silco tells Jinx that they can only trust each other, that nobody else understands them, that everybody else betrays them, etc., etc. And then there's the whole Vi thing, where he wasn't even completely honest with Jinx about her state, at least not in time, and nobody can forget the fact that Silco had a hand in Vander's death and Vi's arrest, to begin with. On the other hand, though, there's a fair amount of people that defend Silco. He might be a bad person, a terrorist, and a drug lord, but at least he's a good father. Silco's there for Powder/Jinx after Vi abandons her, and right after the time skip, when Jinx makes a mistake on a job, Silco doesn't punish her for it, but instead encourages her to take personal time. He really tries to bring out her stronger side, especially with the whole Powder versus Jinx thing. Silco's the driving force behind Jinx leaving her identity as Powder behind, because to him, it's a symbol of her trauma. He knows she's stronger than that. And then, after Jinx has that fight with Echo on the bridge, Silco is very clearly genuinely concerned about Jinx's well-being. He actually has to be sedated because he's so panicked over her, and as soon as he wakes up, he's trying to protect her again. But does that mean Silco's a good father figure, or that their relationship was even healthy at all? I personally believe that ultimately he really does love her and care about her, but with his own past trauma and aspirations of what Zaun should become, his love for her isn't enough. They dance around in this gray area between toxic and not so very all throughout the show. They bond over shared traumatic experiences, and because of this, he projects his own onto her. I think that this is the main problem of their relationship. Not even outside of that, though, they really do lack the boundaries they should have. Not even Silco can get Jinx to calm down when she's in the middle of a crisis. He is obviously also still using her, in a way, to get Zaun's independence, even though I don't think it's as severe as some people make it out to be. She's fully aware of what her actions are leading up to, and he doesn't let it go too far, like fully giving her up for Zaun. But even though he isn't the best father figure to her possible, it's obvious that he does try, especially when you focus on the smaller details. He keeps the gifts she makes him in his office, like the ashtray, and he encourages her to take breaks and take care of herself. He gives her important tasks that only she's in charge of, like his injections, so that she always feels important to him. Halfway through the show, he even goes to his right-hand woman, Savika, for advice on how to reconcile with Jinx. So their relationship is definitely in this gray area where they really care about each other, but almost to the point where it's... How the writers created such a polarizing relationship, where it's so hard to figure out the truth behind it, is really clever when you break it down. One of the main ways they do this is by subverting the audience's expectations. By the time Silco and Powder meet in Act 1, we, as the viewers, already recognize Silco to be the bad guy. The last thing any of us were expecting was for him to take care of Powder, considering his actions leading up to that point. Also, the archetype of Silco's character, the cold, calculating leader of a rebellion who will do anything to get power, doesn't usually allow for the tenderness that comes with raising a daughter, especially raising Jinx. However, for him it comes almost naturally, like a bad habit. Another really smart way the writers made their relationship so conflicting is by making their intimate moments uncomfortable. The best examples of this are the baptism scene and when Jinx gives Silco the first injection of the show. The characters are placed just too close together, where it's strange to witness. At first glance, it looks almost predatory. However, when you get to know both of their backstories and mindsets, it reads almost more as codependence than anything romantic at all. Keeping Silco's motivations in clear like this is another major factor. Not even just in how he treats Jinx when they're in the same room, but his desires behind his actions in general, as well. Was Silco hiding Vi's condition from Jinx to keep her isolated, or just in the name of protecting her? Was he going to sell her out for Zaun's independence? Why did he even adopt Powder in the first place? Of course, none of this would be able to work if it weren't for them being so isolated. Silco has Savika, yes, but even then, Jinx and Silco really only come to trust each other to the fullest extent. Savika and Silco's relationship is way more professional than familial. Honestly, I wouldn't even consider Silco and Jinx as just family. They're more than that. They're almost perfect reflections of each other. They had almost identical childhoods where they went through the same betrayal from a sibling, and they are doing the same awful things now that they're older. Silco very clearly sees Jinx as a younger version of himself, and this only feeds into the whole nobody understands us thing even more. Finally, and what I think is the most important, is that there really are moments of genuine care between them. Like I said, when Jinx almost died, Silco had to be sedated because he was so worried about her. And then, when Silco was given the offer of Zaun's independence in exchange for Jinx, he immediately went to cover for her and protect her from the head counselors of Piltover. When he's dying in that final scene, his last words are spent reassuring Jinx. He insisted that she was completely perfect, and he never would have given her to Piltover, not even for the independence he's been fighting for his entire life. He doesn't want her to feel guilty. She does, anyway, obviously, but, he can only try his best. The nature of Silco and Jinx's relationship all throughout Season 1 was a complicated one, to say the least. So many people thought so many different things of it, it's hard to figure out what they meant to each other. However, one of the most important parts of gray areas like these is that there are just as much genuine good to weigh out the bad. In truly abusive relationships, these good parts are manufactured, tactical, but in Jinx's and Silco's case, it was just as genuine as everything else. They loved each other, they needed each other almost too much. So, thank you for sticking around on my analysis of their relationship and how it came to be from the writing side. I post videos like this every week, so if you don't want to miss out on my next one, make sure to subscribe and leave a like if you want more Arcane breakdowns. I could go on for hours about this show, I swear, even Season 2. But as for right now, thanks for watching.